When Daniel signed the divorce papers, he didn't look at her. Mira sat silently in the cold attorney's office, her hands trembling in her lap. 10 years of marriage reduced to a signature and a sigh. The reason was simple, brutal, and unforgivable. She couldn't give him a child. "I want a family," Daniel had said, as though she hadn't wanted one too. After countless hospital visits, whispered prayers, and tear-soaked pillows, the verdict had come like a final storm. She would never conceive. Daniel moved on quickly. Within months, he remarried a younger woman. Mira moved into a small, aging apartment at the edge of town. The walls were thin. The nights were long. And silence became her loudest companion. The first winter after the divorce was especially cruel. Snow fell in thick sheets, and the wind howled through broken corners of the building. Mira worked 2 shifts at a small diner just to afford rent and groceries. She survived on leftovers most nights. One evening, while walking home with a small paper bag of unsold bread rolls, she noticed 3 little boys huddled under the bridge near her building. They couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Identical. Triplets. Their jackets were too thin for the cold. One of them was trying to wrap his arms around the other 2, as though his small body could shield them from winter itself. Mira slowed down. She should have walked past. She had nothing, but something inside. Her, something that had been aching and empty for years, pulled her toward them. "Are you boys alone?" She asked gently. The smallest one nodded. "Mom went to heaven," he whispered. "Dad left before that." Her heart shattered in places she didn't know still existed. Without thinking, she knelt and opened the paper bag. "I have some bread. It's not much, but it's warm." They stared at her like she had offered them the world. That night, she brought them home. She gave them blankets. She made them tomato soup with the last of her groceries. She listened as they told her their names: Ayon, Zaid, and Mikhail. 3 fragile hearts. 3 empty stomachs. 3 little souls who had known too much loss. She told herself it was temporary, just until she found help for them. But the next night, she returned with more food. And the next. Weeks passed. She learned that they had been evicted after their mother's death. No relatives. No one searching. No one caring. Except her. The apartment that once echoed with loneliness now filled with soft laughter and tiny footsteps. They called her Miss Mira at first. But one evening, after she tucked them into bed, Ayon asked quietly, "Can we call you Mama?" She turned away so they wouldn't see her cry. That word, Mama, healed something in her that doctors never could. "I'd like that," she whispered. She filed for emergency guardianship. It took months of paperwork, inspections, and scrutiny. People questioned her stability, her income, her ability, but they never questioned her heart. And eventually, the court granted it. She was officially their mother. A childless woman who had been discarded for her infertility became the mother of 3 boys who had been discarded by the world. Life was hard. Money was tight. But love was overflowing. She packed their lunches with handwritten notes. She attended every school meeting. She worked nights and still woke early to braid scarves around tiny necks before winter mornings. Sometimes she went hungry so they wouldn't. Sometimes she cried in the bathroom so they wouldn't see. But every time they hugged her, every time they ran into her arms after school, every time they whispered, "We love you, Mama," she knew. She had everything she once thought she'd lost. She just didn't know that one day, the world would witness exactly what her love had built. Raising 3 boys alone was like trying to hold back a storm with bare hands. Mira worked relentlessly. She cleaned houses during the day and waitressed at night. Her hands cracked from detergent and cold water. Her back ached constantly. But she never complained. The boys noticed. They saw the way she hid overdue bills. They saw the shoes she repaired instead of replacing. They saw her pretending she wasn't tired. When they turned 12, they made a silent promise to each other. They would change her life. Ayon excelled in mathematics. Zaid fell in love with engineering. Mikhail had a gift for technology. Their teachers called them brilliant. But brilliance without money rarely finds opportunity. Scholarship applications became their nightly ritual. Mira stayed up helping them proofread essays. even when her eyes burned from exhaustion. When acceptance letters arrived from top universities, with full scholarships, Mira fell to her knees in gratitude. She remembered the bridge, the bread, the first mama. And she realized that seeds planted in love always grow. The day they left for college, she hugged them tightly. "Don't worry about me," she said bravely. But the apartment felt unbearably empty after they left. Still, they called every day. They worked part-time jobs. They built ideas. By their final year, the triplets had developed a revolutionary, renewable energy storage system, technology that could power rural areas at minimal cost. Investors laughed at first. Then they ran the numbers. Within 2 years of graduation, their startup exploded globally. Headlines called them the miracle triplets. But interviews always ended the same way. "None of this would exist without our mother." Mira watched those interviews from her tiny living room, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. She didn't need wealth. She just needed them safe and happy. She didn't know what they were planning. She didn't know that every success, every contract, every late-night meeting had one ultimate goal: to repay the woman who gave them everything when she had nothing. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning when the town began to tremble with noise. 3 private jets descended toward the small regional airport. People gathered, whispering. Luxury cars lined the runway. News crews appeared. Mira was at work, wiping tables at the diner, when her coworker gasped, "Turn on the TV." On the screen were her boys, no longer boys, stepping off 3 separate jets. Each jet bore the same name across its side: Mama. Her hand shook. The reporter announced, "The founders of one of the world's fastest growing energy companies have returned to their hometown today for a special announcement." Mira dropped the cloth. Minutes later, a black car pulled up outside the diner. The door opened, and there they were, in tailored suits, confident, radiant. But when they saw her, they ran like little boys again. "Mama." She collapsed into their embrace, unable to speak. The entire diner stood frozen. "We told you we'd change your life," Mikhail whispered. They led her outside. The town had gathered. And then Ion took the microphone. "When we were 6 years old, we had nothing. No parents, no home, no future. One woman fed us her last piece of bread. She gave us warmth when the world gave us winter." Zaid continued, voice breaking. "She never had children of her own. But she chose us." Mikhail pointed toward her. "Everything we are is because of her." They handed her a folder. Inside were documents. They had purchased her old apartment building, renovated it completely, and converted it into a housing center for homeless single mothers. In her name. They had also built her a home, beautiful, warm, filled with sunlight, just outside town. And the jets. Each one funded scholarships for abandoned children, named after her. The crowd was silent. Mira could barely breathe. "I didn't do it for this," she whispered. "We know," Ion said softly. "That's why you deserve it." Daniel saw it on the news. His new marriage had failed. Ironically, he never had children. He watched as the woman he once called not enough stood surrounded by 3 accomplished sons. He saw the love in their eyes, the gratitude, the pride, and for the first time in his life, he understood what he had lost. He showed up at the ceremony's edge, not to reclaim, just to witness. When Mira saw him, she didn't feel anger. She felt peace, because the woman who once begged to be loved was now standing in the center of a love so powerful it moved nations. Daniel approached quietly. "I was wrong," he said simply. She smiled gently. "Yes," she agreed. And then she walked back to her sons. Because her story had never been about revenge. It had always been about love. Years later, the housing center helped thousands. Scholarships changed countless lives. And every anniversary of the day she met the boys, they recreated it. They sat under that same bridge, with fresh bread, together. "Why do we still come here?" Zaid once asked. Mira smiled. "Because this is where love began." Her life had started with loss, but it became a story of abundance. She was never childless. She was chosen. And in the quiet of her beautiful home, surrounded by laughter and framed photos and the echo of 3 grateful hearts, she realized something extraordinary. The world may measure wealth in jets and companies and headlines. But true wealth? It's giving your last piece of bread to someone who needs it more, and trusting that love will one day return, multiplied.